Ntate Mangweni,
Morning, Chair.
can we start with our meeting?
Yes, Chair. I've got
I think we are
most of the
correct.
members.
Recording in progress.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Good morning, honorable members. I wish to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Select Committee on Finance. Today, we are convened to conduct public hearings on the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, that is B5 of 2025. We extend a special welcome to the COSATU Congress of Trade Union, who will be making an oral submission before the committee. We value our engagement and the perspective you bring, as the issues addressed in this bill affect workers, employers, and the economy as a whole. We also acknowledge and appreciate the written submission received from the Association of Savings and Investment of South Africa, ASISA, the Law Society of South Africa, and the Institute of Retirement Fund Africa. I will also like to welcome officials from the National Treasury and SARS, who will respond to the submission and later provide a clause-by-clause briefing on the bill. Colleagues, this is an important process in ensuring that the bill is properly scrutinized and that all stakeholders' views are considered. With that said, we will now proceed with COSATU presentation. And I will request honorable members, whoever is going to speak or raise their views, including our stakeholders, please switch on your video so that all honorable members, we know that we are talking to the right person. So I think I will now hand over to COSATU to do the presentation. COSATU, Comrade Matt.
Morning, Chair, morning, members. Thanks for giving us space, as always, to COSATU just to share our views. So we can just upload a presentation, Chair, quickly. Feel slightly guilty that it's just us, if I'm right, presenting Chair today. But I think, from our side, the issues are quite important. I think our presentation is fairly straightforward. The bill, Chair, the RLAP largely focuses on some adjustments that became a necessity because of the two-part pension reforms. We have been quite intimately involved in this journey with colleagues in Treasury, with colleagues in both houses of Parliament before and after the elections, especially before. And so there's been a long journey over the past 5 years, Chair. I think we're quite pleased that it's not often that we'd actually manage to forge significant amounts of consensus between government, business, and labor. This is a unique occasion when, despite the initial kind of divergent views, we actually managed to find each other. But we think, Chair, there is 4 issues we still think need to be resolved in the RLAB and even beyond the RLAB. Issues that we've actually discussed quite extensively in bilaterals with colleagues in Treasury and also during the parliamentary hearings before the implementation. And I think, Chair, there was still a need for further details to be fleshed out, but I think there was significant consensus around the substantive issues with colleagues in Treasury, and especially that once we had concluded with the implementation phase on the 1st of September last year, and we had seen that how things would pan out, etc., get over the administrative challenges of implementation, we'll look at these issues. So we are a little bit disappointed, Chair, that a year has passed almost, and we haven't. In fact, yes, a year has passed. It's already September, and we haven't begun these discussions, and there's no reference in the bill. So the bill, Chair, we're fine with it. It provides administrative amendments which we think are straightforward, etc. But we think there are these outstanding, urgent, substantive matters that we don't think should be simply delayed forever. So that's really the heart of our presentation. The issues for us, Chair, about what happens to workers when they lose their jobs, the issue of taxation and withdrawals, the issue of vested rights, further relief to workers, and of course the issue also of education loans. So I think that's the point we really want to kind of raise with members today, with colleagues in Treasury and so forth. We don't think they're difficult, Chair, to resolve or to find consensus, but we do think they need to be looked at. Even we look at some this year and some the following year. But I think, Chair, we have seen substantial progress in the rollout of the two-part pension reforms. I think we had worked closely with colleagues in Treasury and SARS, CISA, the pension funds, and ourselves as Labour. And I think we are quite pleased that, despite the real challenges of in preparation for September last year, we've actually managed to do quite well. And to date, Chair, about 3.5 million workers have received about 56 billion rand in the once-off relief, and then also from the savings pot. And we've also seen, savings longer term actually be increased at the same time as well. So I think, it's largely gone quite smoothly, despite initial bumps. So, Chair, on the issue of job losses, so before the law was changed last year for the September implementation, if a worker lost their job, they had access to all the savings. Because you didn't want a scenario, Chair, where workers lost their job, they have maybe R1 million in their savings, but they can't save their house, they'll forfeit it to the bank, etc. They can't save the car, they can't buy food or electricity, etc. So under the previous law, if you lost your job, whether you're retrenched or dismissed, resigned, retired, you had access to everything. Under the new law, you can access your savings pot, obviously. You can access whatever in your vested pot, whatever you set up by 1 September last year. But what's in your preservation pot, you would only access that when you retire. So that creates a bit of an anomaly that a worker may exhaust their savings in the vested pots. They may still have substantial savings going forward in their preservation pot, but they wouldn't be able to access it, yet they would have lost their job. So, Chair, some discussion we've had with colleagues in Treasury and also even the parliamentary hearings was that the principle is that workers, when they lose their jobs, they're retrenched, they're dismissed, they should be allowed to access all the pension funds, including the preservation pot. So we've excluded the issue of resignations because obviously you had to have a bit of a compromise. You can't have a complete depletion of pension funds. But we do think, Chair, if a worker in this economy loses their job, they should have access to everything. Chair, I think just to state the obvious, painful realities, we have a 42.9% unemployment rate. It takes on average at least about 2 years for a worker who loses the job to find another job. We do fear, Chair, that we are witnessing the commencement of a very painful chapter in this economy with a lot of job losses. We've seen, Glencore and other companies shedding jobs because of the increasingly unaffordable price of electricity. We're seeing many jobs in the agriculture, manufacturing sectors, motor manufacturing as well, preparing to lose jobs because of the tariff turmoil with the US. And we don't have a comprehensive social security net. And of course, Chair, we know that many workers really struggle to access their funds from the UF or not even covered by the UF, depending on the type of work. So there is a real need when a worker loses a job to have access to everything. So, Chair, I think for us, and there were some useful thoughts, I think, from colleagues on Treasury side, without us being the spokesperson. Could you, if a worker had, let's say, R500,000 rand in the preservation pot, the monthly salary is 20,000 rand. Could you release a kind of like a monthly annuity type where you would just cover the income that they had lost? You wouldn't give them everything at once. So we think those kind of discussions are quite useful, would be amenable to it. But I think the point is that if a worker has lost their job, they must have access to the monies. We can discuss modalities, but I think the principle was key. So that's the issue of the job losses, Chair. Chair, on the issue of vested rights pot, so whatever you saved up by 1 September last year when the law came into effect, on that's your vested pot, and out of that, that's where the 30,000 rand once-off relief came from. And the 30,000 relief, Chair, was a fair compromise to give some sort of comfort to workers because they wouldn't have saved up much in the savings pot. But, if you look at the high levels of indebtedness of most workers, be it public servants, be it workers in the private sector, 30,000 minus tax is not really enough to make it a significant dent. Our proposal there, Chair, is workers need a bit large amount to pay off debts, but we do appreciate that pension funds and government are also worried about depletion of pension funds and so forth because of resignations. So, Chair, we think there is space for a fair compromise, which could give workers meaningful relief, could boost savings in the longer term, but also give workers choices based upon their individual family circumstances. And so our proposal, Chair, is to allow workers the right to choose if they want. If they don't want, they can leave it. But if they want to choose to transfer funds from the vested pot, that's money they saved up by September last year, to the new two-pot regime, this should be voluntary. So it should be the choice of workers. And if they do transfer, then it should be to the new two-pot regime based upon the two-thirds formula. That two-thirds would go to the preservation pot, which they would access upon retirement or losing a job. And one-third would go to a savings pot, which they could access annually if they want it. If they don't want it, they can also just leave it there to accumulate. And also allow workers the choice to decide how much they want to transfer from the invested pot to the new two-pot regime. So we're saying why we're saying the issue of choice is because you do have some workers, a teacher, a police officer, people in stressful jobs who like the idea of a large amount of money in the vested pot that they can access upon resignation. They might intend, because there's a few million there, after maybe being a police officer for 20 or 30 years, to resign before retirement, take that money and establish an SMME, a small business. Other workers, Chair, enjoy their job, but they're drowning in debt, they're blacklisted, etc. The salary isn't coping, and they're in a debt spiral. And they would love simply just to kill off the debt and then be able to live off the income and so forth, or settle the home loan early, etc. So we think it makes sense to give workers the right to choose based upon what suits them. But if you choose to transfer invested pot, then it must follow the two-thirds formula. So two-thirds for preservation, so you boost savings, and then one-third for the savings pot, so you give more meaningful relief. So we think, Chair, that would help to find a fair compromise between boosting savings, but also giving more meaningful relief, and also discouraging resignations and helping workers kill off the debt, etc. Chair, on the issue of taxation, we know it's a very difficult thing. I'm sure if we were to do a poll right now amongst everybody in this committee, even the SARS colleagues, everybody hates paying tax. But I think, Chair, for workers, especially low-income workers who earn very little, some of whom are below the tax threshold, below the 94,000, give or take, there was a lot of deep frustration about having to pay tax on the pension withdrawals, especially the once-off relief and the withdrawals from savings pot. We do appreciate, Chair, that the pension regime is based upon tax incentives to save and tax disincentives when you don't save. But there was a deep sense of anger amongst ordinary workers who really felt that unintended consequences government making billions off of workers' misery, indebtedness. And of course, these are caused by a stagnant economy that workers are not responsible for, etc. Chair, I think it's also important to always bear in mind that pension funds are workers' deferred wages. And I think, Chair, it's also important to bear in mind that the point of the relief was really to help alleviate, to free workers from extremely high levels of indebtedness. Chair, and look, we do appreciate, the pressure that SARS and government are under. We do appreciate the really significant, severe fiscal constraints, and there's many competing demands. And if you reduce tax here, there's a knockover effect elsewhere. But we do think, Chair, there is a need for a discussion, because even separate from this two-part reform debate, we've seen increasing levels of taxation upon low-income, middle-income workers. Not adjusting the PIT tax brackets for 2 years, the electricity hikes, etc., etc. So there is a real squeezing of low-income workers. So we do think, Chair, there is a need for a review of how can we ease the tax burden upon low-income workers, whilst bearing in mind the equally pressing needs of the fiscus, etc. So, Chair, we have, basically flagged, 5 different options. Some options may make sense, some may not make sense, but we do think they are definitely worth consideration by colleagues in SARS. Could we have no taxation on early withdrawals for workers who are below the income tax threshold? Because you had a perverse reality, Chair, that clothing workers, for example, who earn the minimum wage, don't earn enough to pay the income tax. They're below the threshold. But when they withdrew, they often were pushed up into the income tax bracket. Because it might have been maybe 10,000 below the income tax bracket, they withdrew 20,000 Rand. all of a sudden they're now paying tax. Chair, we also think it's important to take into account that often withdrawals by low and middle income workers push with the next tax bracket. Perhaps there's some thought around that. Could we look at that the first withdrawals by low income workers be tax exempt, or could the 30,000 rand and less be tax exempt, etc., or even just maybe a less onerous tax regime like 10% as opposed to the PIT rate? The PIT rate was a significant increase for most workers because before it had been a flat rate, and now it is linked to your PIT. So, Chair, we know all of these things are difficult, but we thought here's 5 different options, and they should definitely be thought about, especially those geared towards workers below the income tax threshold and those in the bottom income tax brackets. Chair, the last set of thoughts, and doesn't need to be the most urgent one. I think the other ones are more urgent. Is could we look at pension funds being used as collateral for education? Investing in a worker's education or their child's education isn't a luxury expenditure. It's an investment in their career path, their earning potential, but also their retirement savings. And again, many workers can't afford education fees. If you look at fees, for example, to University of Cape Town, it's about 65,000 rand a year. So if you're a clothing worker who earns 95,000 rand a year, how would you afford that? We find many middle-income workers and their families no longer qualifying for NSFAS because of the 350 family income cap. Also, Chair, that threshold for that family income hasn't, if I'm right, been adjusted since NSFAS commenced. So it's being eroded annually. So less and less workers would qualify for it. So proposal, Chair, is that for some thought to be looked at, could workers use the pension funds for education fees, just like you have for home loans. So that is the 4 kind of, in essence, proposals, Chair. So in conclusion, Chair, we would hope that these proposals, we know these are outside of what's before the committee in the RLAB, but these are issues we have been discussing in the select committee, the standing committee with Treasury for the last few years. We don't think we should just be simply kicking the can down the road forever in perpetuity, especially when we had broad kind of consensus, so to speak, on the objectives of relief for workers who lose their jobs, vested part transfers, etc. So they're not new issues per se. We have had a lot of discussions. So I think, Chair, in conclusion, maybe also just refresh memories. I think maybe Honourable Ryder would remember that during the select committee's hearings on the RLAB in March 2024, if I get the date right, there was specific concern around the issue of taxation. And I think there was also an issue of concerns around the issue of workers who lose their jobs, how to give more meaningful relief through the vested pot, etc. But Chair, I think all of these can be resolved in a manner which is win-win. I don't think we need to have a win-lose approach. I think we all are sensitive to how to find the sweet spot of giving relief to workers, boosting long-term savings, giving alternatives to resignations, and also helping workers to ease the debt burden upon them. So I think, Chair, these are proposed in essence. We wanted to raise it with members, see how we revive these discussions. We hope Treasury would, begin to revive discussions as well with ourselves. And I think, Chair, we think they can be addressed quite quickly, quite in a mutually beneficial way. And it would really be ideal if we can conclude this by next year. So that's our proposals and our thoughts in a nutshell, Chair. Hope it assists members, and thanks for giving us a space as always. Chair, members and colleagues. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Comrade Matt. Just a second, general members.
Chair, you are muted.
On our radar?
Sorry, Chair, you're muted. Did you call
Okay,
for
no,
comments
no,
from members?
yes, no, it's fine. I'm sorted now. Thanks on our radar. I now give opportunity to the National Treasury and the SARS to respond on the question. National Treasury, I see Chris, and from SARS, I'm not sure who's, but whoever is on the platform can also respond on that. National Treasury.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Thank you very much, Honourable members.
Thank you.
So we have compiled a presentation. I know there was a session for Friday originally where we were going to provide our formal responses. And sometimes in these hearings where we have the public hearings, you get our initial informal responses. But we have compiled a presentation that has been approved by the DG to go through. So I can share that presentation if that is okay, and we can do the formal response. Let me just share it quickly. I'll do the introduction, and then Alvina, who is the lead on retirement reform policy, she will go through a couple of the responses related to the retirement reform matters, and Zalasile can come through on the tax-related questions. I hope everybody can see my slides. The slides.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Chair. So just in terms of this, just to give a very brief background, I know we briefed you last week on this, but it was just over a year ago that we did implement this two-part system. In this new two-part system, for new savers, there will be a savings component and a retirement component, or a savings pot and a retirement pot, and individuals will be able to access that savings pot at any point in the future with no conditions. However, within the retirement pot, individuals will need to wait until retirement until they can access those amounts. There is a third part, which is the vested part, and that's related to all the retirement savings from the historical amounts that have been contributed and grown within those retirement funds. And the old rules will continue to apply for those amounts. This Revenue Laws Amendment Bill was introduced really to provide some clarifications and to ensure policy certainty in the implementation of the two-part system. So it was about the timing of that original 30,000 Rand amount that Matthew spoke about that was initially put into those accounts. It's also about certainty, providing certainty to those fund members and administrators, both in terms of some of the definitions, how that amount is calculated, and when the payments can be made. So in terms of those actual amendments within the bill, it's providing an option for funds. So they can either determine that seeding amount on the 31st of August 2024, the day before the system came into place, or on the last day of the month in which a fund member elects to move to a two-part system. So as we mentioned in the hearing last week, this would then only apply for Provident fund members who are over the age of 55. Everybody else was automatically moved into the two-part system. However, there were Provident fund members who were over the age of 55 on 1 March 2021 who need not go into the two-part system, because for those members, they were allowed to take the full amount of their Provident fund as cash when they retire, and we didn't want to take away their historical rights. So they weren't automatically put into the two-part system. However, if they'd want to go into it, then you need to do this calculation, and we're giving them the fund administrators the option of when that calculation is determined. It also amends the definition of members' interest, as well as a proportional deduction for maintenance claims, as my colleague Zalisile explained in the briefing. There are also a couple of amendments to the Retirement Annuity Fund to ensure consistency with the objectives. In terms of the submissions received, there were 4 submissions. 3 of the submissions thankfully agreed to the text, and they supported the text in the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. And the one submission had a number of other proposals to be made from COSATU, which Matthew has outlined. So at the moment, this legislation just deals with what we announced in the budget review, and then we will talk to those other issues now. So I'll ask Alvina to please come in, and she can go through a number of the proposals, and then I'll ask Alicile to come in on the tax amendment. Thanks, Honourable Chair. Alvina.
Thanks, Chris, and good morning, Chair, and good morning, members. So I will take through the broad retirement policy responses, as Chris mentioned. So the first comment that we received was that there's a request for workers to be allowed to access their preservation pot in the event of a job loss. We do note this comment. We did mention, announce in the budget that we would consider this. So we are willing to initiate discussions on potential options to enable members to access the retirement component in cases of severe financial distress. However, it should be noted that these discussions and proposals would follow a legislative process that requires changes to first be included in Annexure C of the budget. Thereafter, once it's approved, it would be included in the tax laws for public consultation and legislative processing in Parliament. Next slide, Chris. Okay, so in the comment and submission we received, there's also a proposal that workers be allowed to choose how much to transfer from their vested pot to the new retirement pot regime along the 2/3, 1/3 split. We do note this comment. We have received several policy recommendations from policy actors affected by the two-pot system. So we will consider this along with any other future refinements to tax policy on retirement issues. It should be noted, though, that this proposal will lead to a large withdrawal from the retirement funds as individuals shift their amount from the savings pot and withdraw, although it would preserve a large amount for retirement. One of the comments is that workers be permitted to use their pension funds for education, similar to provision for home loans. We are not accepting this comment because provision for loans and guarantees for housing purposes is already permissible in terms of the Pension Funds Act, Section 19. And one of the intentions of the two-pot system regime is to allow withdrawals from retirement savings through the savings pot as a mechanism that members can use in emergency cases and for unbudgeted expenses such as education and fees. Next slide. Okay, I will now hand over to Zadisile to take us through the tax-related comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Alvina. Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members. Honorable Chair, through you, I think members are aware that South Africa's retirement system is using a model, the EET model, which actually says that contributions into a retirement fund are tax exempt. Also, the growth within the fund itself over the years of investment is also tax exempt, and tax is only applied upon the withdrawal. This model, honorable members, encourages preservation through long-term saving, and that is where our policy position is as South Africa, is to actually encourage long-term saving, preservation, and also keeping contributions within the fund up until retirement. Honorable members, I think it is an opportune moment for all of us here to appreciate the contributions that this committee has contributed. Also, this includes other stakeholders, including organized labor bodies such as COSATU. and others, Honorable Chair, who might not be here today, but have made significant contributions in the tax policy process leading up to today. Honorable members, indeed, the introduction of the two-pot retirement system has relaxed the design mechanics of our retirement system. Because now we are allowing early withdrawals for personal emergency purposes, and this was not there before. The current design has created some form of flexibility within the system itself, in the sense that retirement fund members are no longer required now or no longer have to terminate their employment to access retirement savings in aid of financial hardship. Honorable members, talking about financial hardship, particularly when it is to aiding low-income earners through the tax system. Our income tax by design has installed very strong nuts and bolts to protect low-income earners. By applying the principles of equity in the system, many low-income workers generally do not pay tax on withdrawals or on income when they are below the tax threshold. Our tax system, the way it is now, is not designed to put burden on the shoulders of workers earning below the tax threshold at all. Honorable Chair, about 6.5 million taxpayers earning below the tax threshold. These taxpayers are already tax exempt. They're exempt from paying taxes. And the majority of them generally do not pay tax on withdrawals. Even though, Chair, there might be instances of a bracket creep, people might be pushed to a higher tax bracket. There are safeguards that we have already put, honorable members, through the tax directive system, so that we ensure there is certainty on the amount that needs to be withheld, and there is certainty on the rate that needs to be applied, so that when members get on assessment, they are not affected in such a way that they are shocked, and it's the first time that they are seeing this kind of an exposure. And we just want to emphasize that the next tax bracket for someone who has been pushed above the tax threshold will probably be the 18% rate, and it only applies to that amount that actually should be liable to tax, honorable members. Just to emphasize, Chair, high income earners naturally pay more tax on withdrawals. This is the design of our system, which actually reflects the nature of our tax system as a whole. As I said earlier, honorable members, that this system we have right now is designed to tax fairly. It is also designed to protect low income earners. And what it really wants to do is to encourage saving for retirement, and also to protect members of retirement funds from instances such as old age poverty, which Chair and honorable members, I think we should all fear strongly. So, honorable members, as I've alluded earlier, is that yes, there are aspects in our design that might require further deliberation, as Comrade Matthew has said. But those, Chair, I'm really hoping that we'll be able to have a sitting at another date, at another time, as we have always been doing with COSATU when they engage with us and giving us all these policy ideas that they have. I don't remember an instance where we have not responded to COSATU, Chair. With that being said, Chair, I will give over to you, or Chris, to have the parting shot. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe I can just add a couple of points as well. So in terms of the discussions with COSATU, I think the one in principle point that we do agree with, which we then included in the budget review at the beginning of the year, was, if somebody loses their job, they can't find another job, they've used their savings pot, they've run out of unemployment insurance fund money, they've got nothing left, but they might have hundreds of thousands left in the vested pot. We need to explore how some access can be provided to them. So that principle is the same. We don't want to undermine the two-pot system completely. We are worried that if you allow anybody who is retrenched, regardless of whether they get another job in a month or whether they've got another job lined up, it could undermine the whole point of the two-pot system. And the point of the two-pot system was to say you can have some access at any time that you want, but the rest must be preserved until retirement to try and improve retirement outcomes. And if we roll back to allow too much access during a working period, it will undermine retirement outcomes at the end. But on the other hand, you don't want individuals who are left with no assets, no income, potentially becoming destitute if they have hundreds of thousands in a retirement pot that they can't access. So that is what we need to try and figure out. From our perspective, where there needs to be quite a few more conditions before access is granted. And if access is granted, it shouldn't be to the full amount in the retirement pot. It should be a smaller amount that could then potentially be accessed in a few years rather than in one go. So that is our thinking at the moment. We still need to have discussions on this with industry, with others, and we need to work on a consultation period for that. On the other points, on the taxation points, I know we get a lot of irritation from many members about the tax that is paid. But as Kasachi said, it's deferred wages, and wages need to be taxed. There's no tax going into the fund. There's no tax within the fund. Tax has to be paid at some point. And the progressive tax system, as Alisile says, that is in place at the moment, ensures that people who have lower incomes either don't pay tax or they pay much lower levels of tax than those on higher incomes. If you have withdrawn from your savings pot, but you have got a lot of income that year, it is only fair that you should then pay tax in line with other people who have the same income. And I think that covers the points. The other points about moving the 1/3 and 2/3 from the vested pots into the new two-pot system. That we need to think about. So we haven't agreed to it in principle, but we are thinking about it. It's a way to then allow workers to potentially access a bit more, but also hopefully then preserve more for retirement. We are a little bit worried about the liquidity impacts. Even the 30,000 Rand seeding amount when the two-pot system started, we were very worried that there would suddenly be all the funds in the country would then need to sell assets to satisfy that 30,000 Rand. And then you might have an impact on the markets and all the prices would fall. So you don't want to have this large market impact. And if you were to allow this in one go, it could potentially be much more than 30,000 per person that goes into it. So those are our concerns, but it is something that we are considering, and it isn't completely off the table. I hope that gives some color to the responses, but we're happy to answer any further questions. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Chris and the team. I don't see SARS, anybody from SARS here, unless if I don't know them. Can you confirm to the meeting that there is somebody from SARS?
Yes, I think Franz Tomasik is here, and I see Johan de la Rey.
Okay, so no,
we do have
fine.
some.
Can we get a response from SARS then? Okay, Franz?
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have anything to add to what Treasury has said so far. I think they've covered the issues fully, and I'm happy to take any questions that may arise. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Can I now allow honorable members to ask any questions or comments to the presentation and response from SARS and National Treasury? I see Honorable Ryder, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Majola, Honorable Siwisa, Lehwase, in that order, Honorable Rider, can you shoot, please?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to the members from Treasury, SARS, honourable members, etc. Thank you very much for the discussions. And as usual, thank you to COSATU for the work that's gone into the inputs into today's discussion. Chair, the limited bandwidth in Parliament is giving me some challenges with my network, so I am turning my camera off. Chair, yeah, I think that there's largely consensus that the bill before us is really just a step towards tweaking the initial iteration of the two-pot system. And I think that the flexibility and responsiveness of Treasury and SARS needs to be commended, because obviously these things have come up in past discussions. And at our last discussion, Treasury did indicate that some of the concerns that we were raising were due to be addressed by an adjustment bill, and now we see it before us. So I'm quite pleased to see that, and I do think that flexibility and indeed responsiveness needs to be recognized. That's borne out by the inputs that we received from the Institute of Retirement Funds Africa, from the Law Society of South Africa, and from the ASISA, the Savings and Investments Association for South Africa. So I do think that what we've got here before us today is certainly improvements in its responses. I think we do still have concerns around the taxation and the impact that it has. The Treasury has indicated in the past already, there is a need to pay tax, and they brought the intentions of the bill into clarity when they discussed it in the past. So I think again, people in need don't want to pay tax, but of course there is a system that needs protection as well. And I do think that the fine balance between protecting savings and pensions that are intended to help people in later life are important to those savings and pensions must be protected as far as possible, with due regard for people's immediate needs. It's no good starving to death with a certificate of a healthy pension fund on the bedside table. But I think quite correct that balance needs to be brought into the system. We are close to that, and I do believe that Mr. Axelson's comments are well received. So, Chair, I do want to just say that I think this is a positive step. Good reasons to support the bill as it stands, and hopefully more tweaks will follow as they come up. But I do also think that the industry needs to be praised for their agility in adopting and adapting to the system, but also for their close involvement in ensuring that what we have here is a system, the product of a couple of bills, but that is nearing the intentions that it was first designed for. So much happiness from our side. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Reda. Honorable Majola.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning to members of the committee. Good morning to members of SARS, National Treasury. And thank you very much, COSATU, for your submissions. Madam Chair, I've got two submissions. One is the comment. The other one is the question for clarity. My comment, Madam Chair, arising from the National Treasury's comment with regard to the proposed flexibility to consider the withdrawal from the retirement point. in the event where the worker do not find other job and they are struggling with regards to the daily or monthly financial commitment. One is looking forward, Madam Chair, in terms of balancing the two, which is to compromise the principle of the two-pot system, which is to give a sense to the worker when it comes to the retirement stage. One is looking forward, Madam Chair, to see what factors will be considered when we consider allowing some other workers based on the circumstances to withdraw from the retirement saving. The question, Madam Chair, is with regards to the objection to allow workers or to permit workers to use their pension fund for education and housing loans. It was stated point blank that it was rejected. But it further, Madam Chair, refer us to Section 19 of the Pension Fund Act. I don't know. Well, to be precisely, Madam Chair, I'm not clear on that one because I don't see a difference between the funding, using the funds for education and to use it for home loans in terms of the weight between the two aspects, which is the education and the housing, because I regard as the essentials. Maybe if we can get the clarity there, well, to say it's been not accepted in terms of the home loans. What does it say if the worker is battling to honor the housing bond repayment in line with the section that we have been referred to? Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Honorable Sibisa.
No, thank you, Chair. Greetings, everyone. Let's also welcome the presentation chair from COSATU. Chair, I'm a bit perplexed, or I'm a little bit confused with the presentation from COSATU, because if we are going to use our pension fund or our savings for the purpose of using it as a collateral for student loans, my question is the same as Umajola. What happens if at the end of the day the parent cannot pay that money back? It means that that money is going to be forfeited. That's my first. That's my concern, Chair, because at the rate where we are standing right now, we should be speaking about free education, especially in tertiaries. But if the same workers that are not being taken serious by government, with the two-pot system that has been put in place and the way there's strawberries and chocolates on top of it, it's very tempting that some parents will go for that because they want an education for their children. But the same children, after the parent has utilized the money that they've saved or the money from their pension funds, they are going to find that those children are going to sit next to them. So in my view, COSATU should have come up with another solution, especially when it comes to loans. It shouldn't even be there. It shouldn't even be an option that they should have access to the money to use it as collateral. I stand to be corrected, Chair, to use the money as collateral when it comes to student loans. We shouldn't even be speaking about student loans. We should be speaking about student funding, which comes from government. And taking into consideration the explanation that we got from National Treasury and all of the money and the taxing that they are going to make on withdrawals that have been made, they should be at least somewhere be saying that maybe at a later stage to say that we are going to boost the NSFAS so that students can there should actually be money to allow for students to study further, because at the moment where we are standing, we can't be speaking about using pension fund as collateral for student loans. We shouldn't even be speaking about student loans at this moment, because already workers are not doing and are not paid enough. Wherever where they are working, they are not paid enough, and because of the bracket where they fall, the higher the bracket, the more tax you're going to pay. So some of them, they have got plans to say, when I retire, I want to take my money because right now I cannot build a house. I want to build a house and leave a legacy for my children. But if the same money can be used as collateral for any other thing, then it means that the exercise is futile, that money is being deducted for the purpose of pension funds, and then the same money you can use it as collateral, especially when we come to students. We should be at the stage of being progressive when it comes to students' education in tertiary institutions. So it's just a concern, Chair, and I think I even raised it before when COSATU came to make a presentation based on the issue of the two-pot system, and they raised it again to say workers must have access to utilize the money as collateral for student loans. And I thought that maybe because that's a concern we brought, they will come up with another option as to how we will be able to work around it. But it's just a concern, Chair, that we can't be speaking about student loans now, taking into consideration the peanuts that workers are getting, especially the middle class, your middle class workers, and the stressful environment that they are at. And then they still have to be stressed after retiring to say that I don't have money to show. I took my money as collateral to take my child to school. Now my child is also sitting next to me, and the child is not getting any employment, because look at the rate of graduates that are sitting at home. Is there a guarantee that after I use this money as collateral and go into a bank and make a student loan, what guarantee do I have that my child is going to get employment somewhere? So it's just a concern, Chair, that we shouldn't at this age and time be speaking about student loans, because we know what happens if the parent cannot pay back the money to the bank is going to claim whatever that the parent has, because it's the same route that the banks take when they actually, you put your house up for collateral. If you want to make a loan, if you don't pay back the money, they are going to repossess your house, or your house can go up for auction so that the bank can get their money back. So we shouldn't even be thinking about using pension fund as collateral for a parent to go into a bank and do a student loan. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Majola, is it a legacy hand or what?
I apologize, Chair, it's the delayed hand.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Lakwase.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the colleagues on the platform. Chairperson, I want to take cue from what Honorable Siwisa has just mentioned on the education loan. But my question will then be directed to National Treasury, as is directed to COSATU, to say that because National Treasury is not supporting the allowing of workers to use their pension fund for education fees, is National Treasury having any alternative solution or initiatives that would propose to they would propose to support workers in accessing education and training opportunities, either for themselves or their dependents? Another question that I have for National Treasury Chairperson is that I would want National Treasury to provide more details on the potential options to enable members to access the retirement component in cases of severe financial distress, as they mentioned in their response. Now, I want to know what criteria would be used to determine a severe financial distress. What do we mean by a severe financial distress? And does National Treasury's response imply that they are open to considering refinements to the two-pot system, including the proposal to allow workers to transfer funds from their vested rights pot to the new regime? What would be the key considerations for such refinements, Chair? And I only have 2 questions for COSATU. I want to know what is it that COSATU propose to ensure that workers who lose their jobs due to retrenchment and dismissal can access their preservation pot without compromising their long-term retirement savings. My last question, Chair, would be on taxation. I want to check with COSATU, how would they propose taxation exemptions or reduce tax rates for low-income workers? And how do they see it impacting on the fiscal constraints and revenue generations for the government? Maybe they must just come up with ways on how to deal with the taxation issue, especially on the low-income workers. I did not hear them express themselves. And Chair, I think these continuous conversations and platforms are also beneficial in trying to find the solutions that balances workers' short-term needs with their long-term financial security. So I would wish for such platforms to be created for National Treasury and COSATU and any other stakeholder that would want to come to party, to can come and make submissions, have these conversations in order for us to achieve the long-term financial security. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Suhase. Honorable Swart.
Very good day, Honorable Chairperson and members. Thank you very much. I'm not going to ask all the questions again that I was dealing with. I was outside my office. I just want to have clarity on this one. Maybe it was addressed, but Treasury says issues must first be listed in Annex C of the budget review before legislation follows. But wasn't there already commitment when Parliament already mandated Treasury in 2024 to review taxation? So that I want to just have clarity on that one. The other questions has been dealt with. I'm not going to ask and repeat all the other questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, honourable members, for your questions. Can I now allow the National Treasury to respond and also to take in the committee clause by clause on the bill? As you are responding, can you also deal with the amendment bill clause by clause? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. Ovina, do you want to try and... thanks very much, Honourable Chair. Ovina, do you want to try and answer some of the questions first?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chair. So maybe I could start with Honourable Madrola's question first. So in terms of the Pension Funds Act, a member is able to borrow against their retirement savings for purposes of either buying a house or renovating a house. And that is already allowed. So on that front, the concern or comment or suggestion from COSATU, that is covered. What is not covered is education loans. So on our side, I think we would like to caution on trying to serve or assist in all South African ills using retirement savings, because we see retirement savings for a certain purpose, which is for retirement. And we have now, through the two-pot system, considering the challenges that members are facing, tried to open that up for any other emergencies there isn't a particular case that a member should put forward for them to withdraw. So they can withdraw for any other reason, but it's limited to the savings pot. So our view is that education purposes or any other emergencies that a member is not able to save up for budget for, they can use the savings pot. Moving on to Honorable Lekgosa's question on options for educational loans. We haven't considered that. We would be happy to take any suggestions, but as I've mentioned, and Chris also mentioned earlier, that we need to safeguard these workers' deferred wages for the purpose that they were intended for. But we are happy to engage if members have any proposals that we need to consider. On options for severe financial distress, we haven't yet put those forward. Chris mentioned a few preliminary points that we are considering. For example, the member or the worker has to be out of a job for a number of time, would have finished up or used up access to the UIF. Then access would only be in terms of tranches, not in a lump sum format. So these are options that we need to put forward for discussion, public consultation, and also get any other options that either COSATU or industry or any other relevant stakeholder is able to put forward that we could consider and have a discussion on those. And then lastly, Honorable Lekgosa also raised on whether the refinements for transfers from the vested pot mean that we are willing to consider changes to the current frame of the two-pot system. So this would largely mean doing away with the vested right or the vested pot if members are to transfer whatever is in the vested pot to the savings pot and the retirement pot. It was one of the proposals we had put forward earlier when we started with the two-pot system, and we are willing to consider that. The challenge is that the two-pot system changed the system drastically. So any further changes need to be done in tranches. We can't now overhaul the entire system. That would take us back. So it's something that, again, similar to options for severe financial distress, it would need consultation and engagement, proposals being put forward on how we change the system now, again, to ensure that we're doing away with another pot, the vested pot, leaving only the two pots. And the proposal is that this should be on a voluntary basis, which is unlikely that other members would not want to tap into the vested pot, now going to the challenge of having large amounts being shifted from the vested pot to the savings pot for withdrawal purposes. On Honorable Swart's question on Annexure C, I will leave that to Chris. Thanks. That's all on my side.
Thanks, Sabina. Yeah, on the point, I don't think we've made any commitment to adjust the taxation of these amounts. I mean, we're happy to receive comments as we have. You know, our view still is that those amounts should be taxed, and the structure of the taxation that we have in place is correct. But of course, we are happy to take comments on it. And we haven't, I don't think the minister has made any announcements that we are committed to change that. So, but we can have another look. And Sandra, do you want to go through the clause by clause now? Unless, Honourable Chair, you want COSATU to respond to any of the questions that were directed to them.
Before that, Chris, can I also first check with Frank if there's also anything that you also want to comment on? Then if none, then we can also ask Comrade Met to also indicate if he's clear or you want to comment again. Frank?
Thank you, Chair. And no further comments from my side either. I think Treasury have once again covered all the issues.
Okay, thanks very much. Mehmet?
No, thanks, Chair, thanks, members. I think just to run through it just quickly, maybe five quick issues. Look, I think, Chair, for us, the number one issue is around the issue of job losses. I think we all know the challenge facing the economy, the high levels of unemployment, and the difficulty of finding work. And I think, the DDG, Chris, made the point eloquently that, a worker who is unemployed, you can't leave them in a crisis where they have money but they can't access it, because they could lose their home, they won't be able to pay for the electricity, take care of their kids, etc., etc. And so I think we think there is space to find common ground. The objective is, let's assist workers who have lost their jobs in the time of need. Should they first exhaust their savings pot? Definitely. Should they exhaust their vested right pot? Definitely. You could have a clause that said that you should also exhaust the UF if it's applicable. But just bear in mind, the UF in itself is not in a good state in terms of workers accessing the money, receiving it, etc., etc. But I think the principle could be, or the objective is, let's assist workers and then first exhaust your savings, your vested, your UF finances, and then, of course, once you've done that, to allow workers to access the preservation fund. And it could be done in a way, Chair, to address the concerns around avoiding depletion, etc. And as part of the broader package of give and take, you could have a thing that we supplement a worker's salary, what he would have or she would have received, basically a salary replacement, and you could have some sort of clause that once that worker's back in employment, SARS can detect them in terms of the pay as you earn, that you could then close off access to the preservation fund. So I think you could do it. I think the point is, Chair, let's assist workers when they lose their job. Chair, on the vested pot, I think for us it's really about the second most critical issue, and to see, can we assist with helping workers pay off debt, avoiding the temptation to resignation, but also allowing workers who prefer a large amount for the day they might want to establish an SME or something, allow them that. But I think, Chair, look, we do hear the liquidity concerns of Treasury. And again, Chair, you could look at options to say, what are the maybe parameters, the amounts you could access, etc. Could it be over different years and so forth? You could give it, relief, once a year going forward, etc. You could find some parameters, like we did on the 30,000 Rand, for example. But I think the idea is just to try to give workers who are still struggling with debt some relief. Chair, look, I think on the issue of the tax, and we had kind of highlighted what we thought of 5 different options. I think for us, Chair, the most critical one really is about, you have clothing workers, for example, who are below the income tax threshold. Maybe they're 85,000 Rand. And then they withdraw 15,000 Rand from they get the 15,000 Rand relief for the savings pot. They're now pumped up into the first income tax bracket. So they're now paying income tax. So that's been an experience of many workers. You have similarly workers who might be 5,000 Rand below the next income tax bracket. They withdraw 10, 15,000 Rand, again, bumped to the next tax bracket. And that has real consequences for them. So I think that's, for us, the fundamental issues. And could you, if we were to say out of our 5 tax proposals, what are maybe the 2 critical ones we could suggest? One is that if you are below income tax, you should remain below income tax. Find is a way to avoid bracket creep, etc. I think for us, those are really the critical ones. We know it's not easy for Treasury, Chair, when all of us collectively have correctly put huge amounts of pressure on Treasury and SARS to address the revenue crisis, the expenditure crisis, the many legitimate competing needs. But I think for us, if we say, how can we make the tax regime a little bit less painful for low-income workers, we really want to say those below income tax brackets and the issue of bracket creep. But I think, Chair, last in the tax issue, we do need a more holistic discussion, because we can see on so many different fronts we're squeezing low-income workers continuously. Chair, on the issue of home loans, so the home loans is, I think, as Treasury said, Alvina said, is covered already, but we had highlighted it. It's covered already under the pension law that you can use your pension funds collateral. So we highlighted it as an example that on education, that perhaps we could also consider that. We do, hear the thoughts that, well, you should use your savings pot for that, sure. Of course, you pay tax when you withdraw in your savings pot. The savings pot may not be enough, but given the high cost of education. But I think, Chair, also the point is that the workers we're talking about would ideally be covered by NSFAS. But NSFAS, with all of its many issues, our workers struggle to access it. Families are often kicked out of it for incorrect reasons, but also has not been adjusted for inflation once in the past 5 years, if I'm right. So the catchment, or the number of workers who are covered by NSFAS, is increasingly eroded all the time. When people get increases, the threshold for the family income isn't being adjusted. So I think for us, that's the issue. Sure, the question about student debt, no, we agree with that. That really needs a thorough discussion. The current system really is not doing enough justice. We do need to find what is the right balance between funding higher education, which should be a right. We would want to have more people accessing it, and avoiding burdening people with long-term student debt, but also making sure the system is sustainable. We need that thorough discussion. I know, Chair, there is a private members bill by one of the, I think, Honorable Lonzi, if I'm right, from the EFF, and that could be a useful discussion point to say what do we do to resolve this crisis? Because right now, governors done well around NSFAS, but there is still significant challenges around sustainability, catchment, etc., etc. And it has impact upon universities too, who often struggle to access their trenches, etc. So, Chair, I think let me stop there, but maybe, Chair, the last order on education, could perhaps government look at making what workers spend for their kids on education, for example? Because the reality is education there is a fee for it in many instances. That's reality. Whether we like it or don't like it, it's a painful reality. Perhaps that could also be a matter that could be tax deductible as well, to try to ease the burden upon working class families, Chair. So I think, Chair, let me wrap up there. But I think for us, really the priority for discussions would be around job losses relief to workers and around options around invested pot. But yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, members.
Thanks, Comrade Matt. I think we are now going to allow National Treasury to take us through the clause by clause of the bill. Chris?
Thanks very much.
Can you take us through the clause by clause?
Yes, we can. And Nkandla, do you have it? And can you share and take the members through?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Let me try and share. No. Kulek, I'm not sure if you can assist me.
Yes,
it says
yes,
that the host. Okay, thanks. Sure. I'm not sure if you're able to see now.
Yes, you might just have to zoom in a bit.
Is that fine, Chris? No? Okay. Okay, then the first clause, basically we'll just take you through the first clause, clause 1A, basically clauses A to C. They talk to the amendments to the definition of a member's interest in a retirement component, savings component, and vested component. So we're trying to reflect that the Section 37D deductions with respect to maintenance will apply proportionally across the components. So clauses A to B and C, clauses A to C. And then clause D, basically it's a technical correction because this paragraph dealt with vested component and the reference to savings withdrawal benefit does not feature here. So we're trying to take out the reference to savings withdrawal benefit. And then clause E. Clause E. So what was happening here, we're just amending the proviso to the definition of a retirement annuity. It came up when Chris was mentioning one of the reasons why we have this 2025 RLEP, Basically, there were two amendments last year. The one was made on the 2024 Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, and the other one on the Revenue Laws Second Amendment. So we're basically trying to align the two acts. So that's what we're trying to do here on Clause E. Clause F, basically it's a substitution in subparagraph 2 of the Retirement Annuity Fund. So we're trying to ensure that those who are over 55, those members who are over 55, retain their rights. So then by clarifying with respect to the 2/3 amount, as the 1/3 amount can always be taken out. And then Clause G, the aim is to allow transfers. So that is if a member asks to transfer to a retirement component, and we're allowing that transfer from the savings or vested component. Clause H, it was a technical correction. I think it's much more of a style. So we're clarifying the wording for Provident Fund and Provident Preservation Funds here with respect to those members who were 55 years or older. And then Clause I, here we're clarifying in relation to the savings component that the savings component can be paid as a lump sum on death or on retirement. And then Clause J, this is the amendment in relation to those members who are 55 years or of age or older on 1 March 2021 who decided to use the two-pot system. So we're basically clarifying the two options of valuation, that it can be either on the 31st of August of 2024 or the last day of the month at which the member elects. And then the amendments, the clauses from 2 to 8, basically those ones are technical corrections. So what has happened here was that the first Revenue Laws Amendment Act referred to the years of assessment. However, the two-pot system should come into effect on 1 September and should not be aligned to years of assessment. So basically, that is why we're deleting the reference to applies to years of assessment from these clauses. And then the clause 9 basically is the short title that says this is a Revenue Laws Amendment Act. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honorable members.
Thanks, Intellectual. Thanks. I think that's everything from our side, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Chris, and Dr. Hadede, thanks very much for your presentation. And now going to give opportunity again to honorable members. If there is any comment or any question in relation to the presentations of today, including the clause by clause. So I'm not going to limit you on which part you should ask questions on or comment. Can I check if there is any person who want to say something in relation to today's presentations? And our members? Okay. 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay, thanks very much. Let me ask Ahmed if you have any comment with regard to the presentation. Kosatu? Oh, okay. There is none. And I think this brings us to the finalizations of today's meeting. Honorable members, colleagues, and guests, we have now concluded today's public hearings on the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. On behalf of the committee, I wish to thank COSATU for their oral submission and engagement with us this morning. Your input is greatly appreciated. We also note and appreciate the written submission made by ASISA, the Law Society of South Africa, and IRFA, which will be taken into account as part of our deliberations. Our thanks also go to the National Treasury, the SARS, for their response and for guiding us through the bill clause by clause. Finally, honorable members, I extend my gratitude to members of this committee for their active participation and the secretariat led by Ndete Mangweni for the support provided in organizing today's proceedings. Honorable members, before I close the meeting, I'd like to give an opportunity to Ndete Mangweni for the announcement, particularly on the Friday's meeting. Ndete Mangweni.
Yes, Chair. Good morning, Chair, once again, and members and colleagues. Yes, Chair. Since we only received one submission that needed a response, Chair, and we agreed in our last meeting that we'll check the number of submissions that we receive, allow National Treasury to do preliminary responses and their final responses Friday. And National Treasury has done their final responses today. So unless members, Chair, insist that we must continue Friday, but as things stands, the meeting of Friday will be postponed, Chair, or will be cancelled. Sorry, not postponed.
Yes, the meeting of Friday will be cancelled. Thanks very much, Ndete Mangweni. With those words, honorable members, colleagues, and our guests, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Thanks, members.